Why yes, dear viewer. This 30-second still shot of Misato getting railed was absolutely necessary to the plot. The most tactical way to engage the evil robots is to stretch out your leg, giving you the most perfect butt shot. Your local cat girl absolutely needs the double D implants for the beach episode. Fanservice. It's one of the biggest culture shocks for getting into the more geeky hobbies. Before y'all say it, it's an understandable pain point. If you're in a place for 5 seconds and haven't even decided whether or not you want to stay, but they immediately show you something that looks like corn, yeah, I'd be a little squirmy too. It's just like this weird guttural, visceral reaction to it. Imagine 1 second you're just sitting there watching a Marvel movie in a theater and then BAM! Hookup scene. To the uninitiated, it feels almost as if it's disrespectful. You're basically treating them like they're Cooper Brain troglodytes that need to see Booba on screen to stay hooked. You can't keep them on merit alone, so it feels you have to resort to something akin to a cheap shot. But while it's understandable why it would make someone uncomfortable, I do think fanservice really gets a bad reputation. It's not all fun bags bouncing around and ripped muscles. Fanservice has more to do with fulfilling a fantasy than anything else. For it's something to be fanservice, it just has to be pleasing to the eye without necessarily advancing the story. Like if we had a Devil May Cry and Bayonetta crossover, or like a Doomslayer and Isabel. There is no story. Just the idea of tearing through hell with a dog people have totally normal thoughts about is appealing. But one of the biggest misconceptions about fanservice is the idea that it doesn't serve a purpose, even when it's sexual. Because a lot of the characters look the way they do for a reason. The attractiveness of a lot of these characters is baked into their design because part of who they are is defined by that attractiveness. But when it comes to the design of a character, the attractiveness of them is inherently tied to their design, to the point where if you turn down certain features, it feels like something from the character just went missing. We've all played Resident Evil and we know who Chris Redfield is. The guy's built like a brick shithouse and his character defining moment was him punching a boulder. And none of us really cared how unrealistic that was because it just looked cool. You're in the middle of a zombie apocalypse, so anything went. What he was meant to represent was a hypermasculine hero that the player could look up to. So of course his most exaggerated traits would be whatever makes him the most masculine at the time. In this case, his muscles. But how differently would you have perceived Chris if you took away his muscle? And brought to you by one of the most toxic games in existence. This freaking twink. Quite the culture shock, isn't it? You take one look and realize how much of him really went missing if he doesn't have that over-the-top feature set. Granted, we can cut them some slack because there's actually a balanced reason behind this. For those of you that have never played Dead by Daylight, you have killers and survivors. Killers are always in first person, so survivors have to meet a certain size constraint. A survivor that is larger in size can therefore hide behind less objects, whether that be rocks, trees, or in bushes. But you can't exactly capture the essence of who Chris Redfield is within this sort of a size constraint. And it's not like they can just drop him from this sort of a collaboration event because it's a Resident Evil collaboration and Chris Redfield is just that iconic to the series. So it does make more sense why they would go for his original design instead of his more newer modern designs. But it's that sort of implicit storytelling within the design of a lot of these characters that becomes a very common thing. League of Legends only has 3 champions with a charm as a form of crowd control. When you think of what a charm is, can you ever imagine somebody charming you if they're unattractive? Part of the idea of the charm plays into the gameplay loop of each of these champions, so it would stand to reason that the characters need to have some sort of fanservice-y appeal. Like they took a half-bird, heavily toned him, and then made him shirtless. This isn't an accident. Fun fact about Evelyn, she has 2 point-and-click abilities, a line skill shot that turns into auto-aim after you use it, and an ult that basically only works right in front of her. Meaning if you had a bounce with enough buttons, you could play her completely one-handed. The only other time a charm like that could make sense is if it's meant to be as more of a joke, like if they gave one to Gragas. But beyond just the gameplay itself, attractiveness in a character directly influences how a viewer perceives the character. It doesn't exactly matter what they're doing. An attractive villain always changes from being a villain to I can fix them. An unattractive hero is always going to be seen as a loser. It's not really like they're being locked into either or, but whatever the artist decides to go with directly influences how they tell that story. People do make snap judgments of your character, whether you're attractive or not, because that is something that's baked into basic human psychology. It leads off on the idea that anything considered to be fanservice is completely male-dominated, which oftentimes just isn't even true. The only reason you would believe something like that is if you're only searching in male-dominated spaces. I want you to just get up right now, head on down to your local Barnes & Noble, walk into the quote-unquote horror section, and tell me who you find there. It leads you off on the idea that it's something that nobody wants, while simultaneously trying to claim it's something that undeniably attracts people. There was an article a little while back that actually went out and claimed that the reason Overwatch got beat by Marvel Rivals was because Rivals was gooner baiting. Now, it is fairly obvious that these developers, they seem to have a type. But I don't really think they understood the magnitude of that statement. The reason why whenever you go to a McDonald's they always hound you to get some random rewards app is because they need to build a habit. Which is why the hardest thing to do when somebody has constructed that habit is poach them. Because not only do you have to stop the existing habit, you have to formulate a new one. Which means two things. One, that Rivals beat out nearly 10 years of user habit by just throwing 5 flavors of Emma Frost at the player. And two, Overwatch without fanservice appeal is still filled with people who like fanservice. But then you really have to sit there and ask the question of, well, if that many people like this sort of fanservice stuff, is it really even disrespectful? And that's honestly one of the things that I am kind of tired of seeing. We're just kind of running away with the idea that giving somebody what they want is considered to be disrespectful. It doesn't matter what it is, how stupid it looks, or how people enjoy it, just all that matters is that they do. It doesn't really matter like what people enjoy, how they enjoy it, or how they even consume it. All that matters is that they enjoy it. It's an entertainment medium, so if anything, it's your job to give them something that they would want to be entertained with. If they find themselves entertained by jiggling Booba on screen, or some dude with ripped muscles, then that's okay.